The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, O Lord.
At that time, Jesus came to Jericho, intending to pass through the town. Now a man named Zacchaeus, who was the chief tax collector, was also a wealthy man, was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd. He was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree in order to see Jesus. When he was about to pass that way, when he reached the place, Jesus looked up and said, "Zacchaeus, come down quickly, for today I must stay at your house." And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they all saw this, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to stay at the house of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I extorted anything from anyone, I will repay it 4 times over." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I would like to start by asking our 5th graders a couple of questions. I promise they'll be easy, okay? All right. So, who of you has ever been lost? I know I have. Not recently, maybe, some of you. And what do your parents tell you to do if you ever get lost? Like if you're going to a big place, like an amusement park or something, what do your parents tell you to do when you get lost? To stay put. Why do you think they ask you to do that? So they can trace where you were last and try to find you. That's important. And does anybody here like it when we get lost? No. No. That's pretty universal, right? It's not fun to get lost. Why do we not like being lost? How do you feel if you get lost? Or if you've never been lost, how do you think you would feel? Anybody else? Yeah, feel like you're never going to find them. Feeling almost hopeless sometimes, right? Sometimes we're afraid. Sometimes we're just alone, feeling lonely. Being lost is no fun. Jesus, in the gospel today, tells us that one of the most important things he does is to seek out and to save those who are lost. Because guess what, kids? The big kids here and the littler kids, we all know that feeling too. We don't like it when we feel lost. Sometimes we feel lost because we're not sure where we are. Other times we feel lost because we're not sure how to get where it is we're trying to go. And sometimes as adults, if we're honest with ourselves, we don't even know where we want to go sometimes. So it's common. It's a common feeling. It's not always as scary as when you get lost in a big amusement park, but it's a common feeling, and none of us likes that feeling of being lost. But it's something that we can all identify with. And thankfully, it's one of the things that Jesus says is so important in what he does, is to seek and to save those who are lost. So we have in the gospel today our friend Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is not just a tax collector. You're off the hook, by the way. No more questions. You can relax. Zacchaeus is not just a tax collector. He is a chief tax collector. And he's not just a chief tax collector. He is a very wealthy man, which back in that time when the Romans were occupying the Holy Land, the way that they collected taxes is they hired local people and said, collect as much tax as you can and we'll give you a percentage of it. So that means the more tax they collected, the more money they got. So that means that Zacchaeus was probably not just doing his job, he was probably stealing from the people that he was trying to collect taxes from too. So he was not acting like a very good person. But even though he was a chief tax collector, that meant he had a position of authority and good clothes and good place to live. Not only did he have a lot of money and possessions, in spite of all of that, he felt like he was still searching for something. Searching for something. So he wasn't lost in terms of where he was. He knew where he was, and he knew where he wanted to go. He wanted more money and more power and possessions. But he was lost about what's going to really make him happy. So he was lost in that last sense of, gee, where do I really want to go? I've already achieved the things I thought were going to make me happy, and they do, sort of, but not deep down happy and joyful. So Zacchaeus was out searching for something too. He was lost, but he was also searching, which breaks the first rule of when you're lost, right? Stay put. But the good news is that Jesus has more power than our parents and than the police and all the security personnel to find us. Even when we're wandering around, he can still follow us. But that is a good first rule, that when we're lost, to stay put. And we'll come back to that at the end. But Zacchaeus is looking for something that's going to make him really joyful. And he heard this Jesus is a very special person, and he's healing people, and he's helping people, and he's making them joyful and really, truly happy in a lasting way. He wanted to find out more about this Jesus. So here he is. Picture this guy in fancy robes, okay, fancier than I'm wearing. He's an older person, and what else does the gospel tell us? He's short in stature. So he's trying to find Jesus in this crowd, and he can't see over anybody's shoulders. So he climbs in all his fine clothes. He climbs up a tree, breaking another parent rule, right? You don't play in your dress-up clothes. So he's climbing a tree to be able to see Jesus. And not only does he see Jesus, but as Jesus comes by, Jesus sees him. Jesus sees Zacchaeus. Because not only is Zacchaeus looking for Jesus and looking for joy, Jesus is searching for him. They had never met before, but because Jesus is God, he knew Zacchaeus' name. And he called him by name. He said, Zacchaeus, hurry down, because today I want to dine at your house. I want to share a meal with you in your home. That's pretty exciting. He was looking for this person who was becoming famous, Jesus, and now he's going to come and visit Zacchaeus at home. But again, for us adults, sometimes we have mixed feelings about that. Are we really comfortable welcoming Jesus into our home? There's no time to go home and tidy things up before he comes. There's no time to plan a special meal. He wants to come and visit us just as we are. And that's so important, because that means we don't have to get our act together before Jesus comes to us. He's there to help us to get our act together, but we don't have to perfect ourselves first. And so Jesus comes to visit Zacchaeus, and what does the gospel say? Zacchaeus was filled with joy. He finally found what was going to give him more happiness and lasting joy than anything else in this world. And that is the love of God. The love of God that helps us to be comfortable with who we are and who Jesus is helping us to become. And so he welcomes Jesus into his home. But remember, Zacchaeus was not a very popular guy. People were not very happy that Jesus was welcoming this bad guy and going to have a meal at his home. Zacchaeus could have been embarrassed, but instead he stood his ground. This is where we come back to staying put, right? He stood his ground in what he found was most important, is the one who loved him. Just like your parents tell you to stay put when you're lost because they love you and they will come and find you. And so Zacchaeus finally learns to stay put and let Jesus love him as he is. And not only does he let Jesus love him, but he lets Jesus help him to change the way he lived. He didn't go back to doing mean things to people and stealing their money. He instead said he would share half of his money. That's a lot of money for a rich person. Half of his money with those who were in need. And he would repay anybody that he had hurt. Not only give them the money back, but 4 times the money. Something must have really happened in Zacchaeus' mind and heart to change him. That he would be joyful enough to give away the things that he thought were going to bring him happiness and to stay put, to stand firm in Jesus' love. That's what Jesus wants to do, not only for Zacchaeus, but for each one of us. Because he loves us enough that we can stay put. We can stay in the house of God. We can stay in our relationship with Jesus when things go up and down in our lives. And we can trust him enough to let him in even when we don't have time to tidy things up. Because Jesus comes to seek us out when we're lost, just like a loving family member. And he promises to save us from what? From ourselves, really. To save us from our sins and from all the things that we do wrong, looking for happiness. And instead, to help us to find lasting joy in Jesus' love for each one of us.